Hello and welcome to England Cricket on 99.94. Cricket every day. I'm Daniel Norcross, broadcaster, writer, podcaster, and a man who's just bought a tripod. So hopefully my microphone won't crackle. And I'm joined, as I always am, by the man they all call the puff pastry hangman. It is Rory Dollard, chief cricket writer for the Press Association. I don't know how he came by that name. England Cricket on 99.94 is your new home for England cricket content. And we will be dropping into your podcast feed and on YouTube or the 99.94 app several times every week. So please do rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks for joining Cricket's conversation. What we're going to talk about today is, well, the County Championship season has ended. There are some people who have really pressed their case for England inclusion among the batters. There are same amongst the bowlers, including an extraordinary performance from Liam Norwell that sent Yorkshire crashing out of the First Division. We'll be looking at both the batters and the bowlers. And then, of course, at the end of every season, it's time to evaluate those who perhaps have gone backwards, who have receded further in the thoughts of the selectors. But let's kick off with the batters. And I want to kick off with Keaton Jennings and Haseeb Hameed, because it's the perennial conversation that England cricket lovers have about their opening batters. When it was Cook and Strauss, we didn't pay it a single thought. It was like a world would just happily and merrily go on for England cricket fans. And then as one went, we started to get all sorts of pretenders to the throne, the Lambert Simnels, if you like, of Adam Lyth and Alex Hale, Sam Robson, Nick Compton. And then when Cook retired, they've had to find two pretenders. At the moment, the pretenders are Crawley and Alex Lees.
Good,
and
well
the
done.
Ashes, thank you. In the Ashes, it was Haseeb Hameed and Rory Burns. Before that, it had been Dom Sibley. But remember Keaton Jennings? He nearly became the first man in county cricket after Frank Watson, I think it is, to get a triple hundred and two double hundreds in the same season, which is quite the feat. He was one run short when he got 199 against Surrey in the last game. His game looks in better order, but it's been the way, Rory, hasn't it, that you come in as an opening batter, you get your statutory sort of between 6 and 10 games, and then you're discarded, never to be seen again, unless you're Zach Crawley.
Well, Keaton Jennings, I suppose, is a slightly different case in that he had two separate little stints. They went back to him. He got 100 in each of those, so that stands him astride from one or two of them. So he has got hundreds in India and Sri Lanka. And they did, albeit under Ed Smith's regime of selection, they did go back to him for what was a cancelled COVID tour of Sri Lanka. So they went back to him a third time. So I think that tells you he's someone who has got a certain amount of respect and credit in that setup. When he last played Test cricket, he was very hunched, shotless, didn't seem to be enjoying himself a great deal by the time it ended. But he has done everything that you could ask him to do to be in with a shout again. Now, crucially, he's doing it from the top of the order, because if we look, and we're going to talk about some other people, but England have a very obvious place where if you want to play Test cricket for England and you're a batter, you should probably be doing it at the top of the order, because you're not going to get in. At the moment, 3's locked up, 4's locked up, 5's locked up, 6's locked up. So the fact that Keaton Jennings is pounding out runs and getting big ones, and he's doing it from opener, stands pretty well in his corner. The fact that he's a guy who's got 2 Test centuries in Asia, and we're about to go to Pakistan, stands pretty well in his corner. So I think he's a fascinating Test case, because he doesn't gun it like McCullum and Stokes probably would like them to, but he has found a way this year to score quickly in phases of the game. Once he's established himself and once he's got himself a trench, he's been able to hit a bit out. So I think whether England look at Keaton Jennings for this Pakistan tour will be an interesting sort of measure of how they're looking at performances in county cricket.
Another man who's done that, who's actually sort of slightly upped his scoring rate, and is another man who's been there twice, is Haseeb Hameed. And he's kind of the romantic's choice, because when he first burst on the scene against India, it was just such a delight to watch. He was so young. He seemed to have such great skills and temperament. Then in his second coming, he was really undone against extreme pace. He's a little bit too far stuck in his crease, hands rather low, was exposed massively in Australia. But he's come back this summer and he's still very young. I mean, what is he, 24? He still has an opportunity to come again. And he's had a terrific summer, really. 400s he's posted and his strike rate's up a little bit. And if we are going to look not exclusively at opening batters, because, someone like Harry Brook, for example, in the early part of the season probably established himself as a red ball cricketer as well as a white ball cricketer. But it's the top of the order we're really focusing on. You'd say Haseeb Hameed possibly stakes another claim?
I would be surprised, much more surprised than with Keaton Jennings, to be honest, because I think they'll be wary of going back to Hameed. He looked like a man in the wrong place in the Ashes. He looked like it wasn't necessarily the stage for him. Not a lot about his game tells me that he can find a bit of a landing point with Brendan McCullum's preferred tactics. And Australia, anyone who comes into the team in the next few months, Australia is on the horizon. They're coming again soon. So I think Australia would be licking their lips at the idea of Haseeb Hameed coming back into the England setup, and you don't want to give your opposition the thing that they want. I would say, if we were talking about, we could almost blur the lines a bit here and say we are looking at spaces at the top of the order, but we can pick someone out like Ben Duckett and say, actually, maybe he might open the batting for England, despite not necessarily having done a ton of that recently or made his name there. He has given himself a huge amount of credit on this recent tour to Pakistan. So that's relevant experience. That he's played really nicely, enterprisingly. He's batted pretty briskly and brightly. But if we're talking about the end of the county season and people pushing their claim, well, Nottinghamshire have won the title, the Division 2 title. He scored 1,012 runs in 10 matches, average 72, strike rate 76. Okay, that's something that Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum might get behind. And they might look at Ben Duckett, like Keaton Jennings, someone who had a little taste. And you mentioned before on here that it might have been the wrong place at the wrong time. But at the age he is now, a lot of experience in sort of franchise cricket. He's been around a bit. He has confronted the idea that he might not have an international career. And he's got a little bit of a taste of one now. And I wonder if England are tempted to roll the dice a little bit at that top of the order for Pakistan. Maybe it's Alex Lees more than Zach Crawley, who might ultimately be vulnerable. I wonder if Ben Duckett is the one who'll come in and maybe Keaton Jennings travels as a safe spare. I'm not sure.
Well, I think we got a little bit of a clue, didn't we, in the Oval Test when Ben Duckett was brought into the squad after Johnny Bairstow broke his leg, that they clearly see him, if not next cab off the rank, they want him in and around the setup, which I think gives you the idea of where the selectors' thoughts are heading. Finally, before we move off batting, Josh Bohannon, these kind of guys in the middle order, I sort of saw Josh Bohannon coming through at a time when England had struggled, one win in 17 games, and thought, what they actually need is a little bit of solidity in that middle order. I don't think he's done his case any harm. I just wonder whether, as you say, there are so many people locked in from 3 to 6. Doesn't mean that injuries won't happen. I mean, we saw it with Johnny Bairstow. So do you think he's done enough still to keep the selectors' thoughts nudging in his direction, or indeed anybody else of that type?
Well, he'd actually done slightly better than I thought he had. I felt my impression from being, not slavishly trawling over the scorecards every week has been being with England a lot.
You call yourself a cricket fan?
I know.
I slavishly trawl over those scorecards every minute of the day.
But no, he's done slightly better than I thought. I think he averages, better not get it wrong, I think he averages in the 40s. But it does feel like the momentum is drifting from him. He looked like a really good outside bet for that first test of the summer. England at number 3 specifically. England obviously put their chips on Ollie Pope, and it's basically panned out. I would think they're now drifting from Bohannon, and when you factor in Duckett, when you factor in maybe Will Jacks is looking like an exciting cricketer who's needing a chance. Harry Brook hasn't locked that space yet, and he's just been fantastic. Surely we player of the year, young player of the year again. It looks like they're going to get crowded out, some of those guys, and they're going to have to do something pretty interesting to get the eye, because next summer, it's an Ashes summer. There's not going to be a lot of experimentation and caps getting tossed around. The team that you saw this summer, the batting lineup, will be the batting lineup next summer with maybe one change.
Right, well, we'll take a short break at that point. Afterwards, we're going to run our eyes over the bowlers who have impressed in this year's County Championship.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
So welcome back. Bowlers, we've done the batters. Let's take a look at some of these bowlers. And, well, an obvious one is Ollie Robinson, is back in the side after having trained well. He barely featured in the County Championship and got himself fit. So he's in there. Broad and Anderson are in there. We're talking about a side that's locked up for the batters. It's nearly locked up for the bowlers, but you would say that a couple of guys' names have sprung to mind. Matthew Potts is an obvious one, that if you can take wickets early on in the season, which he did, he came into the side and he was an absolute revelation. Surely they're going to keep an eye on him. Saqib Mahmood made his name through County Championship, but has had a stress fracture of the back this year. Liam Norwell was a man who was really, well, he was advancing his case, wasn't he? He was getting into the fringe of squads. He's playing Lions games. He's only played 4 matches.
He was on reserve, wasn't he, for a test match?
He was. He's only played 4 games in the County Championship this year, but he's made the most significant contribution, individual contribution, probably of anybody across the entire season, by taking 9 wickets against Hampshire to bowl him out for 133, to keep his side, last year's champions, in the First Division, and to condemn Yorkshire. I'm so sad about that. To Second Division cricket, speaking as a Surrey man. Oh, the pain, the torment. Liam Norwell fascinates me because he struck me as a kind of yeoman county bowler when I first saw him, especially for Gloucestershire. And now I kind of see real qualities there. Does stuff with the ball. He's got great stamina when you can get him on the park. He's one that intrigues me. Any other bowlers really sort of come to the fore in what has been, let's face it, Rory, a very, very difficult summer for bowling. That ball they've been using, if you don't get wickets early on, then, well, you're in a bit of shtuck.
Yeah. Potts, like you said, I just think has been the guy whose stock has improved most from day one to day now. He burst on the start of the summer. He bowled loads and loads of overs. I think he took 5 fifers this year, including, well, adding one from England as well. He started really well in the test team, and then crucially, really, really crucially, he got dropped in a very nice, supportive way, which I've mentioned before. But he went back to Durham, and he picked up a bunch more. So he is a guy who's going to be, we'll see plenty of him. No, don't doubt it at all. Another player who I think we've discussed a little bit, whose record demands at least debate and attention, if not caps, is Sam Cook. He has found a way to be effective with a red ball, with a white ball, when they're winning, when they're losing. He is a player who is getting the ball into his areas. He's making the batsman play the game on his terms, which we've seen with Ollie Robinson at his pace is doable. It can be a winning gambit. Now, you can't fill your attack with them, but he'll be someone I think who is on the register. Someone I haven't seen very, very much of, certainly not in person, is Connors at Derbyshire. He ended the season on a little bit of a high. He got a 5 for Ajmal Shahzad former England bowler who knows a bit about bowling fast. He's an ECB fast bowling scout, very fond of him, very keen on him. Just young, right at the start. But again, this England regime might be keen to get people at the start of their journey and have a little bit of input. And he was picked for the Lions. Did he get a 5 for against South Africa, in fact, in the second innings, Connors?
Mm-hmm.
So he's another one. He's an interesting one. I like Jordan Thompson. I'm struggling to create a bandwagon as it stands, but I think he's a really effective, gutsy cricketer. I quite like him. But yeah, as you say, listen, we've got... I mean, I think if England are plotting out their Ashes plan right now, it involves the guys who played this summer. Ideally, it involves Mark Wood quite a lot. And in a dreamland, it involves Jofra Archer. So again, there's not that many places to play for, but we aren't far away from looking at the next generation and the next Ashes after that. And some of those guys we've talked about will come into it.
I mean, what we've done there is focus quite a lot on how the county championship is making bowlers' stock rise. But of course, we've got our eye on the white ball teams as well. And just as a little sidebar, Luke Wood had a really excellent vitality blast. Sam Cook, you mentioned already, was incredibly effective in short form cricket. I mean, in such a way that genuinely surprised me. I'd seen a lot of him with the red ball, but his variations in white ball really surprised me. And I think we've got Jimmy Anderson, mercifully, I don't think listens to us, but he's not going to be around much longer.
He loves Zero Ducks Given, though, I understand.
Of course he does, yes. It's one of his favourite podcasts. But at the end of next summer, England will have played an Ashes series and Jimmy Anderson will be 41. The next Ashes series, and whether people like it or not, Ashes series and cycles thereof are fundamental to English cricket.
Yeah.
It's hard to see Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad not departing the scene after the Oval Test match at the end of July 2023. At which point, bowlers like Sam Cook are going to be really necessary.
In the mix, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, it may not be immediately. It may be while Anderson and Broad are still able and willing that these guys aren't going to get their chance in red ball, but I can see them getting into squads at any rate.
Yeah, sure. Can I ask you just another one? Because I think for like the 7th or 8th or 9th season in a row, I feel like it's worth asking where are the Overtons in this pecking order, because they were on the cusp when they were 18. And they've both played Test cricket this summer. Like, Craig Overton's been in the team in and out for a couple of years. Jamie Overton got his chance finally. But yet, they're almost into those peak years in terms of what you think of a fast bowler should be. And have either of them got closer?
Yes. I think Jamie Overton definitely has. I mean, as a point of difference for Surrey this year, and you look at the sides that are at the top of the county championship table, Surrey, Hampshire, Lancashire, and it's always you've got to have an effective bowling attack. We know about Hampshire's, but it doesn't provide any interest for England fans because they're all of them players who aren't qualified, or in the case of Keith Barker, have been cruelly and unnecessarily overlooked for too long that they're never going to feature. So you look at the Surrey attack, and bearing in mind they've used 22 players. Yeah. Jamie Overton's actually been a really vital component of that attack, because there have been times, especially as the balls got softer, and if we're going to continue to have these softer balls, it's going to be the case, when his extra pace and his extra bounce has really made the difference. And I don't think I've seen him bowl as well and in such a targeted way. And of course, he got his recognition playing for England, because of the nature of the England setup at the moment with Robinson, Broad, Anderson, and Stokes. How you get to be that fifth bowler, being Potts, being Overton, everything depends on injury, doesn't it? Injury and rotation.
But still 30, I would say 34 wickets in 10 games, Jamie Overton. That's... I don't know. I feel like he needs... It's less than Steve Patterson. In a 5-man pace attack,
though, Rory. In a 5-man pace attack. So, number of overs, fewer, pitches, tricky. Yeah, look, I think his stock's risen, whether that means that he's going to play much more England cricket. But I want to throw in one curveball.
Yeah, go on.
Let me throw in a curveball.
Please.
Because it's the man I can see being the English Scott Boland at Melbourne.
Okay.
In 2025. It's Dan Worrell, who is the shrewdest signing in county cricket this year. He's got a British passport. He said he wants to qualify for England. There was suggestion of Ireland. He said, no, mate, no, it's England. It's always England. England all the way. Sounds quite weird in an Australian accent. He's bowled absolutely fantastic. He's done more with the ball than I thought imaginable. He'll know Australian conditions inside out.
Oh, my God.
Well, I just think it would be hilarious if he's in England's squad. And I don't think it's impossible because he'll be committed to Surrey for the next 3 seasons. He'll become qualified for England before the next Ashes series on residency, provided he keeps on playing. And as long as he keeps on being fit, I don't know.
Watch this space. Watch this space.
And I want to say one thing, because we're not going to touch on him in the guys whose stock has fallen, but a man whose stock has never risen as high as it should have done, Tom Bailey. I think he is a proper bowler. And
numbers are great,
in the 1980s, that man would have played 3 Headingley Test matches in 1992, 93 and 94. But unfortunately for Tom, he's not got a look in. Right. We are going to take another short break. It's our final break. And after that, we're going to be looking at the people whose stock has fallen.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
Welcome back. So we've looked at the batters and bowlers who might be clawing their way into contention for England. But who are the guys who've gone backwards? Rory, you've thrown a couple of names in my direction before we came out on air. Run us through them.
I have. Okay, well, just off the top of my head, apart from the ones who are in the team, who we think might have gone backwards a little bit, Dan Lawrence is someone who looked primed potentially for quite a big role. He was in that West Indies tour where Paul Collingwood was the head coach, and it was that was the red ball reset. Lest we forget, that was the red ball reset, and Dan Lawrence was quite a big part of it, and actually quite he was bowling at key moments in Test matches with his pick and mix. He was playing more aggressive mid-order cricket than probably the rest of the team at that point, maybe including Ben Stokes, barring Barbados. He was chatting quite a lot to Joe Root. He seemed like he was getting his feet under the table. He's slipped off, I think. Matt Parkinson had one of those situations where he's finally got his long-awaited Test cap, made his debut, which a lot of people were terribly excited about. I was pretty excited about. And yet, in the same summer that he's got his long-awaited Test cap, he feels to have shuffled down the pack again.
And can we just pause on that a little bit, just for a moment about Parkinson, because I agree with you, and I think part of it is because of the absurd expectations people have of a leg spinner. When he was seen in the Test arena on a pitch that wasn't really turning particularly at Lord's, he didn't bowl the magic ball that turned from leg to hit the top of off. And suddenly everybody said, well, he's bowling too slow. He's never going to cut it at Test level. Then you look at his numbers, and look, they're not fantastic by any means, but what spinners are? I mean, Liam Patterson-White and Surrey managed to win a title without a spinner, a frontline spinner, until their last game when they picked Dan Moriarty in a match that didn't matter. He took a fifer. They had Will Jacks doing all the spin bowling. So, being a spinner in England at the moment is as tough a job as it's tougher, I think, than being an opening batter even.
Well, it's always hard being a leg spinner because it comes freighted with so much expectation and
romance.
Yeah, of course it does, and why not? But I don't think Parkinson's issue is that he didn't bowl the magic ball on TV and he didn't get one for the highlights reel. I think it's that this England regime haven't overtly shown a great deal of interest after that point, and he actually missed a few games for Lancashire, didn't he? He dropped out the team at Lancashire. And I do get the impression that Matt Parkinson is a confidence player and needs to feel a bit backed. And of course, a leg spinner, show me a leg spinner that doesn't need a bit of backing and a bit of support. But I'm not sure. I don't know. I think he'll look back on this summer with bittersweet because he'll say, I became a Test cricketer in 2022. and he maybe went a bit further away from his second cap at the same time.
Let me throw another one in. And look, he's not further away from England's selection in white ball, far from it. He's very much in their thoughts. But I think a guy who has been not entirely understood is Sam Curran. Ed Smith in his book talked about what a crucial player Sam Curran is in lifting players.
Did not manage to read that yet. Sure, I'll get around to it.
Well, you'll get around to it. I'll send you the PDF if you like.
Thanks, yeah.
He started the season with a stress fracture, so he didn't bowl a great deal. And that may have been certainly why he wasn't brought into the side in the early part of the season. But his batting came on leaps and bounds. He got his maiden century. He averaged 70-odd with the bat and red ball. He was absolutely vital to Surrey's Vitality T20 Blast campaign until their players were all taken out and had to play for England. Scored heavily at number 4. He is a guy who won Man of the Series against India 4 years ago at the tender age of 20, and yet is not being talked about in red ball terms, despite the fact that England have got a glaring problem from number 8 to 11. Ben Folkes has to bat and hope to God that the 6-wicket partnership puts on 150. Otherwise, he's marshalling a tail that goes bang, 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 bang in no time. Now, someone like Sam Curran makes all the difference to that, as it used to be the case with Moeen Ali. They used to be all these all-rounders. Another guy, I think, whose stock has fallen, but more as a result of injury, but will that stock come back? I don't know, is Chris Woakes. Now, it's not because of performances on the field, but he's another one who you would imagine in a post... I mean, it might just be that his timing is so dreadful, because when we get to a post-Anderson Broad world, he's going to be a little bit old, but he would be another perfect pick at number 8 to try and balance that tail. Other than that, I think we've looked at Josh Bohannon. I think he's sort of neither gone forward nor back. But one guy that I think genuinely has, through no fault of his own, gone backwards is Rory Burns. It's been to the benefit of Surrey, because he's been able to captain all year. The last time he was able to captain all year, Surrey won the county championship. Again, he's captained all year. Surrey have won the county championship. Very solid presence at the top of the order. But it's almost as if there is no mention of him anymore. That is his Test career, done and dusted. Is that how it feels for you?
It is. It is. It's not impossible that the shout goes out for him during next summer's Ashes, because if they get to an emergency situation, he's played Test cricket against Australia at home and away. He's got an Ashes century to call his own. He might end up feeling like a reasonably safe call in those circumstances. Other than that, we could be at the end for him. And I think it's because what you said earlier about you come in as a Test opener post Strauss and Cook. You come in, you get your 7, 8, 9 tests, you disappear again. Well, he got 33. And that felt like, I think when you get dropped after 33, bit more difficult, because it feels like there's more of the story's been told.
Yep, that does make sense. Any other names you want to put in there before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I do. I want to just throw out, and it's not someone whose stock has fallen, quite the opposite, but I just realised we hadn't mentioned him. And it would be really remiss not to try and get an early mention of Rehan Ahmed into this thing. Because, talking about putting pressure on leg spinners. he's a young kid at Leicestershire, and he'd already, because as soon as you ball leg spin and anyone sees it, you're on the radar, because there's so few of them going around at the highest level. But he looks really interesting. England brought him to Old Trafford earlier this summer, and he had a really, really good long session with Adil Rashid. And that's not accidental. That's important. England's best leg spinner in memory is grabbing the next kid off the block and trying to share a bit of wisdom. And he ended the season, last round of fixtures, he got his first class 5 and his first class 100. Okay, all right, that's something to build on next year, isn't it?
Yeah, he can bat as well. That's something. And it means, much like Adil Rashid, every time, if he plays for England in the future, every time he comes to bat, even if he's 10 years into his Test career batting at number 11, you can say, got a first class 100, this kid. every single one of them's got 100, but that's number 11. Yeah.
So, but genuinely, who knows where that story's going to go? But he's a young, sort of prodigious leg spinner who's done the under-17 circuit, and he's ended the season with bat and ball on a high. So let's, allow ourselves a little bit of excitement about that.
Well, it was a thrilling County Championship season. The right team won in the end. And, and it all went down.
Agree on that.
Yes, it went down to the last session as well before Yorkshire were relegated. Absolutely thrilling stuff. It all kicks off again in about 6 and a bit months' time. I can't believe we're at that stage of the year. We're going to be back early next week when we're going to run the rule over England's 7-match T20 series against Pakistan. We'll know exactly who's won that by then and who's come out, well, on both sides as the major players. Thank you for listening to England Cricket on 99.94 Cricket every day. Please rate, review and subscribe. Download the 99.94 app and follow us personally on @Norcross Cricket and
at the RVD. If you do real RVD, you'll get the wrestling chap.
Ooh, we'll put links up for everything that we do on there, on this podcast and beyond. Also, follow our network at 9994DM on social media. Follow for podcasts and commentary from the bat and ball world. Thanks for joining Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. We speak cricket.